My house was destroyed by a tornado, so I went to my son's place. He said, "We want privacy." I'm Gladys, 67 years old, retired elementary school teacher from Kansas. 5 years after losing my husband, I thought I'd weathered life's worst storms. Then, a real tornado destroyed my home of 40 years, leaving me with nothing but memories. When I called my son Thomas, he invited me over immediately. But 3 days later, his shocking words changed everything. "We want privacy. My girlfriend doesn't want you here." Desperate and heartbroken, I found an old number in my wallet. Nobody knew I still had my high school sweetheart's contact. Before I tell you what happened when he showed up at my door, let me know where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button if you've ever had to start over. Life in Oak Ridge, Kansas had been predictable and comfortable. My modest 3-bedroom ranch-style house wasn't fancy, but it was filled with 40 years of memories. Photo albums chronicling my son Thomas growing up lined the shelves. My late husband, Robert's recliner, still sat in its usual spot by the window 5 years after his heart attack took him from us. I couldn't bring myself to move it. After Robert died, I settled into widowhood as gracefully as possible. Mornings with coffee on the porch, Tuesdays volunteering at the library, Thursdays at my garden club. I had created a new normal that kept loneliness at bay most days. Thomas had moved to Wichita 2 years ago for a better-paying job at an accounting firm. He would visit about once a month, which wasn't often, but enough to maintain our connection. Then he met Jasmine at his office. She was beautiful, ambitious, and 15 years younger than my 40-year-old son. The first time he brought her to visit, something felt off. Her smile never quite reached her eyes when she looked at me. She asked pointed questions about my finances, my house, and whether I had plans to downsize soon. When they left, Thomas promised to call next week. 3 weeks passed before I heard from him. Their visits became less frequent, phone calls shorter. I tried not to take it personally. My friend Marion from Garden Club warned me, men that age sometimes get distracted by new relationships. Give him time. So I did. I maintained my routines, made friends with new neighbors like the Wilsons who moved in across the street, joined the community theater's backstage crew. Life was stable, if not exciting. The weather warnings began on a Tuesday afternoon in May. The local news mentioned potential severe storms. Nothing unusual for Kansas in spring. I've lived through tornado season all my life and rarely worried. Even when the Wilsons knocked on my door saying they were heading to their daughter's house in another county, I thanked them, but declined their invitation to join. "I'll be fine," I assured them. "These warnings usually amount to nothing." That evening was eerily peaceful. The sky turned a strange yellowish green at sunset. I called Thomas to check in, but got his voicemail. Left a message about the storm warnings, mostly out of habit from when he was young, and I always tracked dangerous weather for him. By 10 o'clock, my weather radio blared with urgency. Tornado warnings, not watches. The meteorologist's voice sounded tense as he identified my exact county. For the first time, I felt a flicker of fear. Should I have gone with the Wilsons? I decided to prepare my basement just in case. Dragged down a mattress, flashlight, radio water, and my emergency kit. Grabbed my purse with important documents. As I gathered family photo albums, the wind outside began to scream. The sound is what I remember most. People describe a tornado as a freight train, but that doesn't capture it. It's like a living creature howling with hunger. The pressure changed so suddenly my ears popped painfully. Windows shattered upstairs. The entire house groaned and shifted. I huddled beneath the mattress in the basement corner, clutching my late husband's sweater and praying through tears. The ceiling above me cracked. Insulation and dust rained down. A terrible ripping sound followed as my home of 40 years was torn apart. "Please, God, not like this," I whispered, certain these were my final moments. Then silence, an unnatural quiet that seemed louder than the destruction. I waited, afraid to move. The flashlight revealed dust floating in the beam like snow. When I finally found courage to emerge from under the mattress, water was pouring down the basement stairs. Climbing those stairs was the hardest journey. Each step revealed more devastation. The kitchen was gone. The living room exposed to open sky. My bedroom, just gone, along with all my clothes, jewelry, and the quilt my mother made. Rain soaked everything that remained. I stood in what used to be my front yard, disoriented in the darkness. Emergency vehicles' lights flashed in the distance. Neighbors called to each other. Mrs. Rodriguez from 2 doors down spotted me and ran over. "Gladys, thank God you're alive. We thought, when we saw your house." She hugged me tightly. This woman I only knew from occasional waves and holiday cards. The Red Cross arrived by morning, set up shelter at the high school. Volunteers handed out bottled water sandwiches and sympathy. Someone gave me sweatpants and a t-shirt to replace my soaked nightgown. The school gymnasium filled with shell-shocked neighbors, all of us struggling to comprehend our new reality. Insurance adjusters said they'd need days to assess the damage. It was clear I needed somewhere to go. The Red Cross offered continued shelter, but the thought of sleeping on a cot among strangers for weeks felt unbearable. "Call your son," Mrs. Rodriguez suggested gently. "Family is what matters at times like this." I borrowed a volunteer's phone since mine was destroyed. Thomas answered on the third ring. When I explained what happened, his voice filled with concern. "Mom, that's terrible. Of course you can stay with us. I'll come get you right away." Relief washed over me. My son would help me through this. I gathered my few salvaged possessions, purse with soggy wallet, a photo album, Robert's water-damaged watch, and the clothes I'd been given. Everything else was gone. During the 2-hour drive to Wichita, Thomas was sympathetic, asking about the tornado, the house, whether I was hurt. He didn't mention Jasmine until we were nearly at his apartment. "She's excited to have you," he said, but something in his tone didn't match the words. I was too exhausted to notice the warning signs, too grateful to have somewhere to go, too hopeful that my son would be my sanctuary in this storm. Thomas's apartment was modern and sleek, all glass chrome and black leather. Nothing like the warm, cluttered home where he grew up. Jasmine greeted me with an awkward hug and perfect makeup despite it being nearly midnight. "Welcome," she said, her smile tight. "Thomas made up the couch for you." The couch, not the guest room I knew they had, which Thomas had shown me proudly during my only previous visit to this apartment. I was too tired to question it. That first night I fell asleep instantly from sheer exhaustion. Morning brought the first hints of tension. I woke to hushed but heated whispers from the kitchen. "I thought it would be a night or two," Jasmine hissed. "The insurance will pay for a hotel." "She's my mother," Thomas responded, but without much conviction. I pretended not to hear, made a show of yawning and moving around on the couch so they would know I was awake. The whispers stopped immediately. Breakfast was uncomfortable. Jasmine kept checking her watch, mentioning her busy day ahead. Thomas seemed caught between us refilling my coffee while assuring Jasmine they wouldn't be late for something called brunch with the Harrises. "You'll be okay here alone, right, Mom?" he asked. "We have this commitment we can't break." They left me alone in their apartment, surrounded by designer furniture that seemed afraid of being touched. I spent the day making calls to my insurance company, getting nowhere through automated systems and hold music. When they returned late afternoon, Jasmine immediately noticed I had washed dishes and tidied the kitchen. "Oh, you didn't need to touch anything," she said in a tone that clearly meant the opposite. Dinner that night was takeout they brought home. The conversation stayed superficial. My attempts to discuss next steps, contacting contractors, salvaging what might remain where I might stay longer term, were met with vague responses and changed subjects. After dinner, I overheard them again while I was in the bathroom. "Your mother reorganized our spice rack, Thomas, and she used my special face towel. She's going through a trauma, Jazz. Cut her some slack." "For how long?" "We talked about this apartment being our private space, our sanctuary from everyone else. I spent the night sleepless on their uncomfortable couch, feeling increasingly unwelcome. The next morning brought things to a head. I was making coffee when Thomas and Jasmine emerged from their bedroom, already dressed for work. The conversation started innocuously with Thomas asking about my insurance calls. "Any luck finding out when they'll pay for temporary housing?" he asked. "They said it could be weeks," I admitted. "There are so many claims from the tornado." Jasmine exchanged a look with Thomas. He cleared his throat. "Mom, we need to talk about arrangements." I knew what was coming before he said it, could feel it in the pit of my stomach. "We want privacy," he continued, not quite meeting my eyes. "My girlfriend doesn't want you here." The words hung in the air between us. Jasmine didn't even have the decency to look embarrassed. It's not that we don't care, she added quickly, but this is our space and we're not set up for guests long term. I'm not a guest, I said quietly. I'm his mother, and I have nowhere to go. Thomas had the grace to look uncomfortable. The insurance money will cover a hotel mom. It's not like you'll be homeless. I set down my coffee cup carefully, afraid I might throw it. I see. Don't make this difficult, Jasmine said. We're all adults here. I gathered my dignity along with the few possessions I had left. Yes, we are. And as an adult, I know when I'm not wanted. Thomas tried to backpedal, offering to help me find a hotel, saying they'd visit daily. But the damage was done. My own son had chosen his girlfriend's comfort over his mother's desperate need. I walked out with my head high, saving my tears for when I was alone. Found a coffee shop a few blocks away and sat there watching normal lives continue around me, while mine lay in ruins both literally and figuratively. Sitting in that coffee shop, I opened my water-damaged wallet to count what little cash I had. A small photo fell out, worn around the edges, colors faded. A young man with kind eyes and a confident smile wearing a Letterman jacket. Howard Jenkins, my first love. Seeing his face after so many years brought a flood of memories. Howard with his beat-up Chevy picking me up for dates, dancing under the stars at Miller's Pond, his whispered promises of forever. We were inseparable throughout high school, completely convinced we'd found our soulmates at 17. Then came the opposition from my parents. Howard lived in the run-down apartments across the tracks. His father drank away what little money they had. His mother worked 2 jobs. He worked after school at the gas station to help support them. You deserve better, my father insisted. Someone with prospects, a future. When I received a scholarship to a college 3 states away, my parents saw it as the perfect opportunity to end things. Howard begged me to stay to get married instead. I've got nothing to offer you now, he'd said on our tear-filled last night together. But someday I'll make something of myself, you'll see. I chose college choosing my parents' dreams over my heart. We promised to write, but distance and new experiences gradually pulled us apart. I met Robert my sophomore year, married him after graduation, built a good life with a kind man. I hadn't thought about Howard in years until our 30th high school reunion. He showed up in an expensive suit and arrived in a car that cost more than our house. He'd gone to night school, worked his way up in construction, eventually starting his own development company that had projects across 3 states. We talked all evening, catching up on decades of life. He never married. Never found anyone who measured up, he'd said, looking at me in a way that made me blush despite being a happily married woman of 50. At the end of the night, he had written his number on a business card. If you ever need anything, Gladys, anything at all. I'd kept that card, transferred it to new wallets over the years. Never told Robert, never planned to use it, but I couldn't bring myself to throw it away either. Now, homeless and rejected by my own son, I stared at that water-stained business card. The number was barely legible. Would he even remember me? Would the number still work after 20 years? With nothing left to lose. I borrowed the coffee shop's phone and dialed. Jenkins Development, how may I direct your call? A professional voice answered. Howard Jenkins, please, I said, suddenly nervous. May I ask who's calling? Gladys Mitchell, from high school. There was a pause then. Please hold. Seconds later, a deep voice came on the line. Gladys, is that really you? The familiar warmth in his voice brought tears to my eyes. Howard. Yes, it's me. My God, it's been, 20 years since the reunion. Is everything okay? I hadn't planned what to say. The whole story came tumbling out. The tornado, my destroyed home, my son's rejection. By the end, I was fighting back sobs in the middle of the coffee shop. Where are you right now? Howard asked, his voice firm with concern. I gave him the name of the coffee shop. Stay there. I'm coming to get you. Howard, I wasn't calling to impose. You weren't imposing at 17 and you're not imposing now. I'll be there in 30 minutes. True to his word exactly, 30 minutes later, a sleek black Lincoln pulled up outside. Howard stepped out, and my heart did a strange little flip. He was older, of course, silver hair instead of brown lines around his eyes, but his smile was exactly the same. He spotted me through the window and his face lit up with recognition. I gathered my pitiful bag of belongings and went outside. Gladys, he said softly, taking in my borrowed clothes and exhausted appearance. Without hesitation, he pulled me into a gentle hug. Thank you for coming, I whispered against his shoulder, trying not to cry again. I'm just sorry about what brought you to call me. He picked up my small bag. Is this everything? This is everything I have left in the world, I confirmed. He nodded solemnly and opened the passenger door for me. The car's leather interior was luxurious after my night on Thomas's uncomfortable couch. As Howard drove, he didn't press me to talk, seeming to understand I needed quiet. 20 minutes later, we turned into an exclusive neighborhood with massive houses set far back from the road. Howard's home was a stunning modern structure of stone and glass surrounded by immaculate landscaping. A fountain played in the circular driveway. This is where you live? I asked, suddenly self-conscious in my borrowed clothes. Home sweet home, he said without pretension. For just me and Mrs. Winters, my housekeeper. Way too much space, honestly. He led me through a grand foyer with soaring ceilings into a warm, inviting great room. Despite the luxury, it felt comfortable, lived in. The guest house is through the gardens, he explained. I thought you might appreciate having your own space rather than just a room. More privacy. The guest house turned out to be larger than my entire destroyed home. 2 bedrooms, a full kitchen living room with fireplace, and a bathroom with a tub I could practically swim in. Howard, this is too much. He shook his head. It sits empty most of the time. I'd be grateful for you to use it. His eyes held mine. For as long as you need. That first night I slept better than I had since before the tornado. Woke to sunshine streaming through windows overlooking an English garden. The kitchen was stocked with food. Fresh clothes in my size hung in the closet with tags still on. A note on the counter invited me to breakfast in the main house whenever I was ready. No pressure, no timeline. Over breakfast, prepared by Mrs. Winters, Howard offered practical help. I know some good insurance adjusters who can advocate for you, and I've got contacts with restoration companies if anything from your home can be salvaged. His kindness was overwhelming after Thomas's rejection. Why are you doing all this? Howard looked at me for a long moment. Because 50 years ago I promised myself that if I ever got the chance to be there for you, I would. Even if we're just friends. Over the following days, Howard kept a respectful distance while providing everything I needed. He made calls to his contacts about my insurance, sent people to check if anything could be salvaged from my property. In the evenings, we would talk for hours about our lives, our regrets, our joys. He told me about building his business from nothing, about traveling the world. I told him about my years teaching, about raising Thomas, about losing Robert. I never married, he admitted one evening as we sat in his garden. Came close a couple of times, but it never felt right. Why not? I asked, though something in me already knew the answer. His eyes met mine. Because they weren't you, Gladys. My heart raced like I was 17 again. For the first time since Robert died, I felt that flutter of possibility, of not being alone. Yet I held back, confused by these feelings when my life was still in such chaos. Howard seemed to understand. Never pushed, just offered friendship and support that grew more precious to me each day. A week after I moved into Howard's guest house, a sleek sports car roared up the driveway. Thomas emerged looking angry and confused. Howard and I were having coffee on the terrace when he approached. "Mom," Thomas called, looking around at the luxury surrounding us. "What the hell is this?" I stood surprised and unsettled by his sudden appearance. "Thomas, how did you find me?" "Mrs. Rodriguez said you'd called to check if anything survived the tornado. She mentioned you were staying with an old friend." His eyes darted to Howard. "Is this your old friend?" Howard stepped forward, extending his hand. "Howard Jenkins. Gladys and I go way back to high school." Thomas ignored the offered hand. "So, you get kicked out and immediately shack up with some rich guy. What's going on here, Mom?" His accusation stung. "I didn't shack up with anyone. Howard offered me a place to stay when my own son threw me out. We didn't throw you out, we just needed our space." A second car pulled up, Jasmine getting out her face a mask of artificial concern. "Thomas was so worried about you," she called, hurrying over in her designer heels. She stopped short, taking in the impressive surroundings. Her expression shifted from concern to calculation. "Well, looks like you landed on your feet," she said, voice dripping with insinuation. Howard straightened, his expression cooling. Gladys is my guest for as long as she wishes to stay. No strings attached. Thomas looked between us. Mom, this is crazy. You barely know this man. Come back with us. We can figure something out. Before I could respond, Jasmine placed a possessive hand on Thomas's arm. Actually, we were thinking the insurance money could help both of us. We could help you find a smaller place, and maybe you could help us with a down payment on that house we looked at. The truth emerged like an ugly weed. They hadn't wanted me in their space, but they wanted access to whatever insurance settlement I received. Howard's jaw tightened. I think you should leave. Stay out of this, Thomas snapped. This is family business. Finding my voice, I stepped forward. No, Thomas. Howard is right. You need to leave. Years of holding my tongue, of making excuses for my son's selfish behavior fell away. You made it clear I wasn't welcome in your home. Now I'm making it clear you're not welcome in mine. This isn't your home, Thomas shouted. You're just using this old man. What's he getting out of this arrangement, huh? Howard stepped between us. That's enough. I won't have you speaking to your mother that way on my property. Jasmine tugged at Thomas's arm. Let's go. She's made her choice, but remember this, Gladys. If you leave everything to him in your will, we'll contest it. They left in a spray of gravel, leaving me shaking with a mixture of anger and heartbreak. Howard gently led me to a chair. I'm so sorry, I whispered. I never thought my son would— Don't apologize for him, Howard said firmly. You deserve better than that. As we sat in silence, I realized a painful truth. I had lost more than my home to the tornado. I had lost the illusion that my son would always be there for me. But in that loss, I had gained something unexpected, the freedom to put myself first, perhaps for the first time in my life. 3 months passed in the sanctuary of Howard's guest house. The insurance finally came through, not enough to rebuild exactly what I had, but sufficient to start over if I wanted to. Howard's business expertise helped me make smart decisions with the settlement money. I didn't rebuild on my old property. Instead, I sold the land to a developer. The tornado had swept away not just my house, but my attachment to that place. Too many memories, good and bad. Howard never pressed me about leaving. Stay as long as you want, he would say whenever I brought up the future. I like having you here, and I liked being there. His greenhouse became my sanctuary where I could nurture plants and watch things grow again. We fell into comfortable routines. Coffee on the terrace in the mornings, walks through his gardens in the evenings. Howard introduced me to his friends, successful people who welcomed me warmly into their circle. For the first time, I had an identity beyond Thomas's mother or Robert's widow. I was simply Gladys appreciated for myself. 2 months after their dramatic visit, I received a letter from Thomas, a halting apology admitting he'd been wrong, claiming Jasmine had influenced his behavior. He wrote that they had broken up after she made comments about his inheritance potential. I read the letter several times, emotions churning. Part of me wanted to rush to comfort him, as I always had. The wiser part recognized this as an opportunity to establish healthier boundaries. My response was kind, but firm. I forgave him, but explained that our relationship needed to change. No more taking me for granted. No more expecting me to sacrifice my needs for his wants. We would rebuild our connection slowly, based on mutual respect. On a golden autumn evening, Howard and I sat by his fire pit watching the sunset. He took my hand, his expression serious. Gladys, I have a proposition for you. My heart skipped. Oh, I'm 70 years old, too set in my ways for marriage again. He smiled. But I'd like a companion for whatever time I have left, someone to travel with, to share meals and conversations with. Are you asking me to move in permanently? I asked, hardly daring to believe it. Into the main house, as my partner, not my guest. His eyes crinkled. Unless you'd prefer to use your insurance money to get your own place. I'd understand completely. I thought about it for only a moment. I think your house has plenty of room for both of us. The next week, I moved my few belongings from the guest house to the master suite. Started volunteering at the local elementary school, keeping that part of my identity alive. We planned a trip to Europe for the spring. Thomas visited for dinner on my terms. It was awkward but hopeful. A new beginning for us, too. He seemed genuinely happy that I had found companionship with Howard, especially after meeting him properly. Sometimes when I wake up in Howard's beautiful home, I feel momentary disbelief at how my life has changed. The tornado that destroyed everything I had somehow blew me right where I needed to be all along. Last week, Howard and I visited my old neighborhood. Where my house once stood, a new family was building their future. I felt no regret, only gratitude for the storm that forced me to find my own strength. Sometimes losing everything is the only way to find what truly matters. Have you ever had to completely restart your life? I never expected at 67 that I would begin again, yet here I am, happier than I've been in years. Leave a comment below sharing your own story of rebuilding after loss. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to hear more stories of unexpected second chances, and hit that like button if you believe it's never too late for a new beginning. Thank you for listening to my journey from devastation to joy. Remember, life's worst storms often clear the path to our brightest days.